I once believed my job at Sterling Dynamics would open doors to a brighter future. But after one fateful encounter with an arrogant man who couldn't stand being challenged, everything crumbled. I lost my career because of him, simply because I refused to bow down. What he didn't know was that I would return and transform his family's CEO chair into the very place where he'd fall to his knees, begging for mercy. My name is Emily Carter, and at 32, I thought I'd finally made it. After years of clawing my way up from small-town Ohio, drowning in student loans, and surviving on ramen through countless unpaid internships, I'd landed a senior marketing position at Sterling Dynamics. The glass towers of their Manhattan headquarters felt like a monument to everything I'd sacrificed to get here. The morning rush at Sterling Dynamics was a symphony of ambition. Elevators packed with sharp suits and sharper elbows, the constant ping of emails demanding immediate attention, and the underlying current of anxiety that came with quarterly reviews. I thrived in it. My heels clicked against marble floors with purpose as I navigated through the 20th floor, coffee in one hand, laptop bag in the other. Emily, did you see the Henderson account numbers? Marcus, my colleague, fell into step beside me. His smile was friendly enough, but I'd learned to read the calculation behind every interaction here. Everyone was both ally and competitor. Up 12% from last quarter, I replied, matching his pace. The campaign restructure worked. He whistled low. Thompson's going to love that. Thompson was our department head, a woman who'd survived 20 years in this corporate battlefield by being twice as good and 3 times as ruthless as any man in the building. My cubicle, though calling it that felt wrong since I'd earned walls and a door 2 years ago, overlooked 6th Avenue. Some days, I'd stare at the ant-like people below and remember waiting tables back in Columbus, dreaming of exactly this view. The American dream, they called it: work hard, play by the rules, and you'll make it. The pressure was relentless. KPIs dominated every conversation, every meeting, every breath we took between 9 and whenever we could escape. Sales targets, engagement metrics, conversion rates, numbers that determined whether you'd eat steak or ramen next month, whether you could make your rent in this impossibly expensive city or have to call home for help. Tail between your legs. Team meeting in 5, Sandra announced, popping her head into my office. She was newer, hungry in that way recent graduates always were, before the system had worn down their edges. I gathered my files, checking my phone one last time. Another text from my mother asking when I'd visit. Another reminder about my student loan payment. Another LinkedIn notification from someone I'd never met claiming we should connect and explore synergies. The conference room was already half full when I arrived. The usual suspects arranged themselves in the unofficial hierarchy we all pretended didn't exist. Senior staff near Thompson's seat, middle management filling the center, juniors pressed against the walls like wallflowers at a high school dance. Before we begin, Thompson said, her voice cutting through the morning chatter, I want to address the elephant in the room. There are going to be some structural changes coming down from the C-suite. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Structural changes. Corporate speak for someone's about to lose their job. Nothing's confirmed yet, she continued, though her tight smile suggested otherwise. But I want everyone operating at peak performance. The Henderson success story. She nodded in my direction. That's what we need, visible wins. As the meeting droned on through quarterly projections and budget reallocations, I felt the familiar knot of anxiety that had become my constant companion since joining Sterling Dynamics. This was success in America, perpetual fear dressed up as motivation, exhaustion masquerading as dedication. Walking back to my office, I passed the executive floor entrance, mahogany doors that might as well have been golden gates, separating us from them. The Sterling family and their inner circle occupied the top 5 floors, a vertical kingdom where different rules applied, where mistakes were learning experiences instead of career enders, where structural changes meant someone else would take the fall for your failures. I didn't know then that my carefully constructed world was about to collide with theirs, that everything I'd built through years of sacrifice would crumble because I dared to have a spine. That the very meritocracy I'd believed in was just another fairy tale sold to people like me. People who needed to believe that hard work alone could overcome the accident of birth. But that morning, I was still Emily Carter, senior marketing manager, living proof that a girl from Ohio could make it in New York, still naive enough to believe that competence mattered more than connections, that dignity was worth more than a paycheck. I was about to learn exactly how wrong I was. The first time I saw Bradley Sterling, he was screaming at an intern for bringing him the wrong coffee. The girl, she couldn't have been more than 22, stood frozen in the break room, her hands trembling as his voice echoed off the walls. "Are you completely incompetent?" I said. "Oat milk, not almond. Can you not read? Or are they hiring illiterates now?" The intern mumbled an apology, her face burning red. I watched from the doorway as she hurried away, probably to cry in the bathroom like so many of us had done in our early days. Bradley didn't even look up from his phone as she fled. He was 28, but carried himself like he owned the world, which, technically, he would someday. Armani suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, a Rolex that caught the light just right whenever he gestured. And that particular brand of confidence that only comes from never having heard the word no that actually stuck. "Pathetic," he muttered, finally noticing me. His eyes traveled from my feet to my face with the kind of assessment that made my skin crawl. "You're Emily from marketing, right?" "That's right." "Good. I need the quarterly reports revised. The numbers don't tell the story I want them to tell." I felt my spine straighten. The numbers tell the actual story. That's what reports are for. He laughed, a sharp sound devoid of humor. "You're joking, right? The reports say what we need them to say. That's business 101, sweetheart." "Sweetheart?" The word dripped with condescension. "I don't falsify data," I said evenly. "If you want different numbers, achieve different results." His expression shifted, the fake pleasantness evaporating. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, you're someone asking me to commit fraud." The break room suddenly felt smaller. Bradley stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over me. "I'm someone who could have you fired before lunch. I'm someone whose father signs your paychecks. I'm someone you should be a lot more careful around." Over the next few weeks, Bradley made his presence felt like a disease spreading through the department. He'd appear at random, criticizing presentations he hadn't bothered to read, dismissing strategies that had taken months to develop, undermining anyone who dared to challenge his half-baked ideas. "We need to pivot the Henderson campaign," he announced during one meeting, sprawling in a chair like he was sitting on a throne. "It's too conservative." "It's up 12%, I pointed out. "The client is thrilled. The client doesn't know what they want. Trust me, I had dinner with their CEO last weekend, golf buddy of my father's." He'd name drop like that constantly, reminding us that while we studied spreadsheets, he studied power. While we networked at awkward industry mixers, he networked at country clubs and charity galas where million-dollar deals were secondary to the real business of maintaining dynasties. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Bradley cornered me in my office, closing the door behind him without invitation. "I need you to sign off on the Brennan contract," he said, dropping a folder on my desk. I flipped through it, my stomach sinking. The contract was a web of inflated charges, hidden fees, and promises we couldn't possibly deliver. It was designed to trap Brennan Industries into a dependency that would bleed them dry over 5 years. "This is predatory," I said. "Brennan's a family company. This could destroy them. That's the point. Once they're desperate, we acquire them for pennies. It's already decided." "Then get someone else to sign it." His jaw clenched. "You're the senior manager on the account. It needs your signature." "No." The word hung between us like a challenge. Bradley's face flushed red, his composure cracking. "You stupid bitch," he snarled. "Do you think your little ethics matter here? Do you think anyone cares about your small-town morality? Get out of my office. This is my office. This entire building is mine. You're just a temporary employee who forgot her place." He leaned over my desk, his cologne nauseating. Sign it, or I'll make sure you never work in marketing again. Not in New York, not in Ohio, not anywhere that matters. I stood up, meeting his glare. I said, "Get out." For a moment, I thought he might hit me. His hands clenched into fists, his breathing shallow. Then he smiled, a cold, calculating expression that was somehow worse than his anger. "You just ended your career," he said quietly. "You don't even know it yet. But you're already gone." He left, and I sat back down, my hands shaking, outside my window. New York continued its relentless pace, oblivious to the fact that I'd just declared war on someone who'd been winning since birth. I didn't know then that he'd already started spreading lies about my performance, questioning my stability, planting seeds of doubt in every executive ear. I didn't know about the emails he'd fabricate or the meetings he'd claim I'd missed. All I knew was that I'd refused to kneel. And in Bradley Sterling's world, that was an unforgivable sin. The call came at 9:47 a.m. on a Monday. "Emily, could you come to HR, bring your company laptop and access badge?" The walk to human resources felt like a funeral march. Colleagues averted their eyes as I passed, the kind of deliberate looking away that meant everyone already knew. The office drums had been beating all weekend, apparently. Everyone knew except me. Janet from HR couldn't meet my eyes either. She shuffled papers while a security guard, seriously, a security guard, stood by the door like I was some kind of threat. "Emily, I'm afraid we need to discuss your performance and some serious allegations that have been brought to our attention." "What allegations?" She slid a document across the table. My signature stared back at me from a report I'd never seen, authorizing expenditures I'd never made, dated from a day I'd been home with the flu. "This is forged," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Check the security footage. I wasn't even in the building that day." "The footage from that period has been corrupted. Convenient, wouldn't you say? Convenient for whoever fabricated this." Janet's expression didn't change. She'd probably had this same conversation a dozen times before. Crushing careers with the detached efficiency of someone processing invoices. "There's also the matter of your repeated insubordination, your failure to support critical company initiatives, and concerns about your professional stability." My professional stability? Several colleagues have reported erratic behavior, emotional outbursts, an inability to work collaboratively with senior leadership. Senior leadership. "Bradley, this is retaliation," I said. Bradley Sterling wanted me to sign a fraudulent contract. I refused. "Check my emails," I documented. "Your email account has been suspended, pending investigation." "Emily, I'm going to need your badge and laptop now. Security will escort you to clear your desk. You have 15 minutes. 15 minutes to pack up 3 years of my life. The photo of my parents at my college graduation. The stupid motivational mug my sister had sent when I got promoted. The awards that had meant everything yesterday and were worthless paper today. Marcus wouldn't look at me as I passed his cubicle. Sandra was conveniently in a meeting. Thompson's office door was closed, blinds drawn. The same people who'd celebrated my Henderson campaign success last week now treated me like I had something contagious. The security guard watched as I filled a pathetic cardboard box, his hand resting on his radio like I might steal staplers on my way out. When we reached the lobby, he held out his hand for my badge. "You're no longer authorized to enter the premises," he said, as if I hadn't figured that out. "Any personal items you've forgotten will be mailed to you." I stood on the sidewalk, holding my box, watching the lunch crowd stream past. Just another casualty of corporate America. Invisible in my professional defeat. My phone buzzed with an automated email my company accounts had been deactivated. My health insurance would end in 30 days. My final paycheck would be deposited after deductions for damages related to misconduct. The subway ride to my apartment in Queens felt endless. Every face seemed to judge me, to know I was a failure masquerading in a business suit I could no longer afford. My phone rang. Mom. But I let it go to voicemail. What would I tell her that all those years of sacrifice, all that debt, had led to this? My apartment looked different when you knew you might lose it. 900 square feet that cost $2,800 a month. Affordable only with a Sterling Dynamics salary. The walls seemed to close in as I did the math. Savings would cover 2 months. Maybe 3 if I ate nothing but rice and canceled everything. My student loans would default. My credit would be destroyed. I opened my laptop and started updating my resume, but the cursor blinked at me accusingly. How do you explain being fired for cause? How do you get references when everyone's been told you're unstable? How do you fight a narrative written by someone with unlimited resources? The rejection emails started within days. Positions I was overqualified for suddenly found me not quite the right fit. Recruiters who'd pursued me for months stopped returning calls. One finally took pity and told me the truth. Emily, I'll be honest. You've been blacklisted. Whatever happened at Sterling, someone made sure everyone knows about it. I thought about my parents, still working at 65 because they'd spent their retirement savings on my education. I thought about my sister, who'd always said I was too ambitious for my own good. I thought about every night I'd stayed late, every weekend I'd sacrificed, every time I'd chosen career over life because I believed it would pay off. Sitting in my apartment, watching my bank balance dwindle and my prospects evaporate, I felt something harder than despair settle in my chest. It was rage, cold and crystalline, the kind that doesn't burn out but hardens into purpose. Bradley Sterling had taken everything from me because he could. Because in his world, people like me were disposable, interchangeable, worth less than the inconvenience of finding someone else to sign his dirty contracts. But he'd made one mistake. He'd left me with nothing to lose. And someone with nothing to lose is the most dangerous person in the world. Revenge isn't born in the heat of anger. It's conceived in the cold hours of insomnia. When you're staring at your ceiling at 3 a.m., calculating exactly how much you've lost. It gestates in coffee shops where you use their Wi-Fi because you've canceled your internet, and it takes its first breath when you realize that destruction requires construction first. I started with research. The New York Public Library became my office, free Wi-Fi, climate control, and access to databases that most people didn't know existed. LexisNexis, Bloomberg Terminal access through the business section, corporate filings that painted Sterling Dynamics in fascinating detail. Bradley Sterling, I learned, was more vulnerable than his arrogance suggested. His father, Richard Sterling, had built the empire through intelligence and ruthlessness. Bradley had inherited only the latter. Every executive position he'd held showed the same pattern: initial placement, gradual decline in department performance, quiet transfer to another division. His father was playing an endless game of chess, moving his disappointing son around the board to minimize damage. Emily Carter. I looked up from my laptop to find David Zhao, a former colleague from my first job in Columbus. He looked successful, tailored suit, designer glasses, the confidence that came from being on the winning side of capitalism. David, what are you doing in New York? Moved here 2 years ago. Started a fintech company with some MIT buddies. You? I could have lied. Maintained some dignity. Instead, I told him everything. Sometimes the truth is more powerful than any fabrication. David listened, his expression darkening with each detail. Bradley Sterling, he said finally. I've heard that name. He tried to muscle into one of our deals last year. Thought he could intimidate us because we were a startup. We told him to fuck off, professionally speaking. And now we're worth $50 million and growing. Emily, are you looking for work? That's how it started, not with some grand plan, but with a conversation between two people who'd been underestimated by men like Bradley Sterling. David's company, Apex Solutions, needed someone who understood corporate marketing from the inside, someone who knew how the Sterling Dynamics of the world operated. I can't pay you what Sterling did, David admitted, but I can offer equity. If we succeed, you'll be set for life. I accepted immediately. Not for the potential money, but for the access. Apex Solutions operated in the same ecosystem as Sterling Dynamics. Same conferences, same clients, same playing field. My first month at Apex, I reached out to every contact I'd made in 3 years at Sterling. Most ignored me. But some, the ones Bradley had also wronged, the ones who'd been stepped on, overlooked, discarded, they responded. He doctored my performance review. One told me over drinks in a Brooklyn bar. I kept the originals. He's been skimming from client accounts. Another whispered during a conference break. Small amounts, but consistent. I have spreadsheets. There's a woman in accounting. A third mentioned. She filed a complaint that disappeared, but she kept copies of everything. I became a collector of sins, each piece of information carefully cataloged, verified, cross-referenced, not through hacking or illegality. That was Bradley's way. I used something more powerful, the collective rage of people he'd considered too insignificant to matter. Meanwhile, Apex was growing. David's algorithm was revolutionary. But it was my marketing strategy that made clients pay attention. I knew exactly what corporate America wanted to hear. How to frame innovation as inevitability. How to make established companies fear being left behind. How do you do it? David asked after I'd closed a $2 million contract with a Fortune 500 company. It's like you know exactly what they're thinking. I do. I replied. I used to be them. 6 months into my new life, I attended the Marketing Innovation Summit. Sterling Dynamics would be there, they always were, peacocking their superiority. I knew Bradley would be presenting, taking credit for campaigns other people had created. I wore my best suit, bought secondhand but impeccably tailored. When you're building a weapon, every detail matters. The conference hall was packed. I sat in the middle, invisible, in the crowd, watching Bradley stride onto stage like he owned it. His presentation was polished, professional, and built entirely on the Henderson campaign, my campaign. During the Q&A, I stood up. Mr. Sterling, fascinating presentation. I'm curious about the attribution model you used for the Henderson campaign. The metrics seem familiar. He squinted into the lights. I'm sorry, you are. Emily Carter, Apex Solutions. I ask because those are my metrics. From my campaign, created before you had any involvement with Henderson. A murmur rippled through the audience. Bradley's smile tightened. I think you're confused. This was a Sterling Dynamics initiative from the start. I have the dated files that suggest otherwise, but that's not really why I'm asking. I paused, letting the silence build. I'm wondering if you fixed the attribution problem in your other campaigns. The ones where the numbers don't quite add up. The ones your investors might find interesting. His face went pale. The moderator quickly moved to the next question. But the damage was done. Every phone in the room was already texting, tweeting, spreading the story of Bradley Sterling being called out by someone no one had heard of. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've started. I texted back, neither do you. The chess game had begun. Bradley thought he was playing against a discarded pawn. He didn't realize I'd spent months off the board, transforming into a queen. The transformation of Apex Solutions from startup to threat took 18 months. 18 months of 16-hour days, of turning David's brilliant technology into market dominance, of building something that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. But more importantly, 18 months of strategic positioning that would give me access to the rooms where real power was negotiated. We've been invited to bid on the Morrison Group contract, David announced during our Monday meeting, his excitement barely contained. That's a $50 million opportunity. Morrison Group was Sterling Dynamics' second-largest client. They'd been locked into an exclusive partnership for a decade. The fact that they were even considering alternatives meant something had shifted. I'll handle the pitch personally, I said. The Morrison building was everything Sterling Dynamics aspired to be. Old money confidence without the desperate need to prove it. James Morrison, the CEO, was 73, sharp as a blade, and completely immune to bullshit. Ms. Carter, he said, studying me over his reading glasses. I understand you used to work for Sterling. I did. And now you're asking me to betray a 10-year relationship with them. I'm offering you a better solution, Whether that constitutes betrayal depends on whether you value loyalty to a company that's been overcharging you by 30% for the last 3 years. His eyebrows rose slightly. I slid a folder across his desk. Comparative analyses, market rates. Evidence that Sterling had been inflating their services because they assumed Morrison wouldn't look elsewhere. Bradley Sterling personally assured me last month that we were getting the best possible rates. Bradley Sterling couldn't price a lemonade stand without his father's help. He's been coasting on your relationship with Richard while treating your company like a personal ATM. Morrison leaned back, a slight smile playing at his lips. You don't like him much. My feelings are irrelevant, the numbers aren't. We got the contract. The networking events that followed were a careful dance. I was no longer Emily from Ohio, desperate to fit in. I was Emily Carter from Apex Solutions, the woman who'd stolen Morrison from Sterling. People wanted to know me, to understand how we'd done it, to calculate whether we were threat or opportunity. At the Waldorf Astoria Charity Gala, $5,000 a plate to fight childhood something or other, I finally encountered Richard Sterling. Bradley's father was everything his son pretended to be: genuinely commanding, genuinely intelligent, genuinely dangerous. Ms. Carter, he said, approaching me at the bar. I've been hearing your name quite frequently lately. Mr. Sterling, all good things, I hope. Interesting things. He studied me with eyes that missed nothing. You've built something impressive at Apex. David Zhao is brilliant, but brilliance without direction is just potential. You're the direction. That's generous. It's accurate. I value accuracy. It's something my son still struggles with. The admission hung between us, loaded with meaning. Your son cost me my career, I said quietly. Because I wouldn't sign a fraudulent contract. I know. He sipped his whiskey. Bradley makes many mistakes. Usually, I clean them up. But sometimes, mistakes have consequences that create opportunities. What kind of opportunities? The kind that arise when someone with talent and legitimate grievance positions themselves strategically. The kind that might benefit from certain information becoming public at precisely the right moment. He set down his glass and walked away, leaving me to process what had just happened. Richard Sterling hadn't just acknowledged his son's failure, he'd all but given me permission to exploit it. The next month, I hired Sarah Chen, no relation to anyone named Chen in this story. Just a brilliant forensic accountant who'd been blackballed from Wall Street for refusing to cook books during the 2008 crisis. I want you to analyze these, I said, giving her the documents I'd collected on Bradley's financial irregularities. Her eyes widened as she reviewed them. This is securities fraud, multiple counts. Can you build a case that would stand up to scrutiny? Give me 2 weeks. While Sarah worked, I focused on expanding Apex's influence. We poached 3 top performers from Sterling's analytics team, offering them equity and the promise of building something that mattered. Each one brought knowledge, contacts, and barely concealed satisfaction at abandoning Bradley's sinking ship. The Global Marketing Conference in San Francisco was where everything accelerated. Apex had a prime booth directly across from Sterling Dynamics. Bradley had to walk past us every day, had to see former Sterling clients stopping to chat with me, had to witness his empire's foundation cracking. On the second day, he confronted me during a coffee break. Enjoy it while it lasts, he hissed, stepping too close. You're playing a game you can't win. I'm not playing, Bradley, I'm working. There's a difference, but you wouldn't understand it. You think you're so clever. You think stealing a few clients makes you powerful. I think building a better company makes us competitive. If that threatens you, perhaps you should examine why. His face flushed. You were nothing. A nobody from nowhere. I made you realize your place. You made me realize I didn't need your approval to succeed. That's the most valuable lesson anyone's ever taught me. A crowd was gathering, phones appearing. Bradley noticed and stepped back, his jaw clenched. This isn't over. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. That night, 3 more Sterling clients reached out to Apex. The tide was turning, and Bradley was starting to realize he wasn't the one controlling it. Power, I was learning, wasn't about crushing your enemies immediately. It was about positioning yourself so that when they fell, it looked like gravity, not revenge. The Wall Street Journal article dropped at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Sarah's forensic accounting had been transformed into a devastating exposé by a journalist I'd carefully cultivated over months of coffee meetings and verified leaks. The headline was restrained, professional, and absolutely damning. Sterling Dynamics faces SEC investigation over alleged financial irregularities. My phone exploded with notifications as I read it over breakfast in my new apartment, still modest, but no longer desperate. The article detailed systematic overcharging, falsified performance metrics, and a particularly damaging pattern of insider trading that traced directly to Bradley's department. By 9 a.m., Sterling Dynamics stock had dropped 12%. The emergency shareholders meeting was scheduled for Friday. 3 days for the empire to crumble. 3 days for Bradley to realize his father wouldn't save him this time. I knew because Richard Sterling had told me himself, in a brief conversation at another charity event. The board needs a sacrifice, he'd said, examining his champagne as if it held profound secrets. Better it be someone who deserves it. Thursday night, David called me into his office. Sterling Dynamics wants to meet, not Bradley, the board. They're asking if Apex would consider a merger. They want to buy us out. Other way around. They want us to buy them. Parts of them, anyway. The profitable divisions that aren't tainted by the scandal. I stared at him. That's insane. We don't have that kind of capital. We do now. He showed me his laptop screen. 3 venture capital firms had made offers in the last 48 hours. Everyone smells blood in the water. They want to back the company that took down Sterling. The shareholders' meeting was held in Sterling Dynamics' own boardroom. A 42nd floor testament to corporate excess. I wasn't supposed to be there. But David had brought me as Apex's strategic consultant. We sat in the back row, watching the destruction unfold. Bradley entered looking haggard, his usual swagger replaced by something hollow. His father sat at the board table, expression carved from stone. The lead investigator from the SEC presented their preliminary findings with clinical precision. Mr. Sterling, the board chairman addressed Bradley. Can you explain these transactions? Bradley's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear. But it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, meticulously documented, impossible to deny. Every forged signature, every hidden fee, every manipulated metric was displayed on screens around the room. This is a setup, Bradley finally said, his voice cracking. Someone orchestrated this. Someone orchestrated systematic fraud spanning 3 years. The chairman's skepticism was palpable. Mr. Sterling, the evidence suggests you orchestrated it yourself. I was just following standard practices. Everyone does this. The room went silent. Richard Sterling closed his eyes briefly, the only sign of emotion I'd ever seen from him. Motion to remove Bradley Sterling from all positions within Sterling Dynamics, effective immediately. One board member said, seconded, all in favor, every hand rose except Bradley's. But the meeting wasn't over. The chairman turned to the gallery, his eyes finding David and me. Mr. Zhao, Ms. Carter, since you're here, perhaps we could discuss Apex Solutions' proposal for the Morrison division. That's when Bradley saw me. Really saw me. His face cycled through confusion, recognition, and finally, understanding. His mouth opened, but no words came. We're prepared to maintain all current employees, David said smoothly. Except those implicated in the current investigation. Of course. The next 2 hours were a brutal dissection of Sterling Dynamics, parsing out which pieces could be saved and which would be sacrificed. Bradley sat frozen, watching his birthright carved up and distributed. His father never looked at him once. When the meeting ended, I stood to leave. Bradley intercepted me at the door, desperation replacing his usual arrogance. You did this, he whispered. You destroyed everything. You destroyed Everything, I corrected. I just made sure people noticed. I'll sue you. I'll prove you set me up. With what money, with what credibility you're about to be federally indicted? Your trust fund is frozen. Your father won't return your calls. His hands shook. What do you want? Money and apology. What will it take to make this stop? It's already stopped, Bradley. Your part in it, anyway. Sterling Dynamics will survive, reformed and restructured. The employees you stepped on will thrive. The only thing ending is your ability to hurt people without consequences. Please. The words seemed to physically pain him. My father. The board. They'll destroy me completely. I'll have nothing. I had nothing, I reminded him. Because of you, I survived. Whether you do is no longer my concern. Security appeared, the same guard who'd escorted me out 2 years ago. He looked at Bradley, then at me, recognition flickering in his eyes. Mr. Sterling, I need to escort you from the building. As Bradley was led away, Richard Sterling approached me. Masterfully done, he said quietly. Though I suspect you're not entirely satisfied. Why would you say that? Because complete victory often feels surprisingly hollow. You've won, Ms. Carter. The question now is what you'll build from the ruins. He walked away, leaving me standing in the boardroom where my destruction had been orchestrated and my revenge completed. Outside, Manhattan stretched endlessly, indifferent to the small dramas of power and retribution playing out in its towers. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, I felt strangely empty, like an actor after the curtain falls, wondering what comes after the climax. But that was a question for tomorrow. Today, Bradley Sterling had lost everything, just as I had. The only difference was, I'd been strong enough to build something from nothing. He was about to learn if he could do the same. The call came at 11 p.m. on a Sunday, 3 weeks after the shareholders' meeting. Unknown number. But I knew who it would be. Emily. Bradley's voice was different, hollow, stripped of its usual arrogance. I need to see you. No. Please, I'm at the Westway Diner on 9th Avenue. I'll wait all night if I have to. I should have hung up, should have blocked the number and moved on with my life. But something in his voice, not manipulation this time, but genuine desperation, made me grab my coat. The diner was nearly empty, fluorescent lights harsh against the late-night darkness. Bradley sat in a corner booth, and for a moment, I didn't recognize him. The Armani was gone, replaced by a wrinkled polo shirt and jeans that had seen better days. His face was gaunt, unshaven, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. You came, he said, looking up with bloodshot eyes. I slid into the opposite booth, keeping the table between us. You have 5 minutes. I lost everything. He laughed bitterly. But you know that. You orchestrated it. You orchestrated it yourself. I just documented it. My father won't see me, won't take my calls. The lawyers say I'm looking at 3 to 5 years minimum. My accounts are frozen. My friends. He shook his head. They weren't really friends. Were they? 4 minutes. I've been living in a motel in Jersey, the kind that rents by the week. I tried to get a job, any job. But my name is poison now. Even McDonald's won't hire me because I'm a liability risk. And you're telling me this because he pulled out a crumpled envelope, sliding it across the table. Because I need your help. I almost laughed. You're joking. I'm begging. The words seemed to tear from his throat. That envelope has information about other executives at Sterling who were involved. People who are still there, still doing what I was doing. I'll testify against them in exchange for a reduced sentence. But I need someone credible to broker the deal, someone the SEC will trust. Why would I help you? Because. He met my eyes for the first time. Because you're the only person who ever stood up to me. Everyone else either feared me or wanted something from me. You just wanted me to be better, to be ethical. I didn't understand that then. Understanding it now doesn't undo the damage. No, but maybe it prevents future damage. Those executives are still there. Emily. Still destroying careers, still corrupting the system. You could stop them. I opened the envelope. Names, dates, evidence I could verify. He'd done his homework. Probably the first real work he'd ever done in his life. There's something else, he continued. A position opened up at Apex. Entry-level marketing coordinator. I know because I applied. David Zhao rejected my application personally. Of course he did. I'm not asking you to get me the job. I'm asking you to let me interview. Let me prove I can work. Really work. Start at the bottom. Earn my way up, legitimately. You want to work for the company that destroyed you. I want to work for the company that succeeded honestly. I want to learn what I should have learned years ago. He paused. I want to earn something real, even if it's just a paycheck I actually deserve. The Bradley Sterling I'd known would never have sat in a dirty diner, would never have admitted fault, would never have begged anyone for anything. This broken man across from me was something else. Maybe something better. Or maybe just desperate enough to pretend. If I do this, I said slowly, you start below entry level. Intern. Unpaid for the first 3 months. You report to Sarah. You remember Sarah? The forensic accountant who exposed your fraud? You do every humiliating task she assigns without complaint. His jaw clenched, but he nodded. You publicly apologize to every person you wronged at Sterling. Written apologies, published on LinkedIn where everyone can see them. Another nod. And you work under your mother's maiden name. Bradley Sterling is dead. You want a new life, you need a new identity. Bradley Morrison, he said quietly. My mother was a Morrison before she married my father. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The Morrison Group, Sterling's lost client, now his claimed identity. One chance, I said, standing, one complaint, one moment of the old Bradley, and you're gone. Thank you. He grabbed my hand before I could leave. Emily, I'm sorry. For everything. I know it doesn't mean anything. You're right, it doesn't. I pulled my hand away. But actions might. Eventually. I left him in that diner, staring at his cold coffee, contemplating a future where he'd have to earn respect instead of inherit it. Outside, New York hummed with its usual indifference. But something felt different. Not forgiveness, he hadn't earned that. Not satisfaction, that had passed. Maybe it was completion. The man who'd tried to destroy me was now asking for the chance to build himself back up. One humiliation at a time. He'd kneel, not in a moment of dramatic defeat, but every day, in small ways, learning what I'd always known, that real success isn't given or taken, it's earned. 3 months later, I watched from my office as Bradley Morrison delivered coffee to the marketing team, took notes in meetings where no one acknowledged him, stayed late doing data entry that algorithms could have handled. He never complained, never mentioned his past, never acted like anything more than an intern grateful for the opportunity. He was becoming what he'd never been before, invisible, insignificant, replaceable, and maybe, just maybe, human. 6 months passed. Apex Solutions moved into new offices, 3 floors in a building that cast a shadow over Sterling Dynamics' crumbling empire. We'd absorbed 4 of their divisions, hired their best people, and claimed their top clients. The company that had once seemed untouchable was now a cautionary tale told at business schools. I stood at my corner office window, CEO of the marketing division, watching Manhattan wake up. The title felt different than I'd imagined it would, not like victory, more like responsibility. Your 9 a.m. is here, my assistant announced. Bradley, still calling himself Bradley Morrison, entered carrying a presentation folder. He'd been promoted twice, earning each advancement through actual merit. The intern who'd delivered coffee had become a junior analyst who stayed until midnight, perfecting reports no one else wanted to do. The Morrison Group wants to expand our contract, he said, setting down his analysis. I've identified 3 areas where we could add value. I reviewed his work. Thorough, insightful, honest. No inflated promises, no hidden fees, no predatory clauses. Good work. Present it to the team meeting tomorrow. He turned to leave, then stopped. Emily, it's been a year. A year since that night in the diner. A year since his complete destruction and tentative rebuilding. I know. My father called yesterday. First time since everything happened. The company's being sold. Sterling Dynamics will cease to exist by next month. How do you feel about that? He considered the question. Like I'm watching someone else's life end. Bradley Sterling's life. I'm not him anymore. No, I agreed. You're not. The SEC dropped most of the charges thanks to my cooperation. I'll get probation, community service, no jail time. That's fortunate. It's more than I deserve. He met my eyes. I need to tell you something. That first day, when you refused to sign that contract, I knew you were right. I knew it was wrong. But I'd never been told no before, and it broke something in my brain, made me need to break you. But you didn't. No. I made you unbreakable. He laughed softly. The ultimate irony. In trying to destroy you, I created my own destroyer. You created your own destruction. Bradley, I just refused to be collateral damage. He nodded, accepting the truth. The legal documents came through yesterday. Bradley Sterling officially doesn't exist. Bradley Morrison has a clean record, a decent job, and a studio apartment in Brooklyn that he can actually afford. And what does Bradley Morrison want? To earn his next promotion, to pay back the people he hurt, financially, where possible, to maybe, someday, deserve to be in the same room as the people he once stepped on. That could take a lifetime. Then I'd better get started. He moved toward the door, then turned back one last time. Thank you, Emily. For the revenge, for the second chance, for showing me who I really was. All of it. After he left, I returned to the window. Below, the city churned with ambition and desperation, with people climbing and falling, destroying and building. I'd been both victim and victor, had tasted both powerlessness and power. David appeared in my doorway. The Journal wants to do a feature, The Woman Who Toppled Sterling Dynamics. Interested? No. That story's over. Then what's the new story? I thought about Bradley, working his way up from nothing, experiencing what I'd experienced but with the added weight of knowing he'd once had everything. I thought about the employees we'd saved from Sterling's toxicity, the clients we'd protected from predatory practices, the culture we were building based on merit rather than manipulation. The new story is that sometimes the best revenge isn't just destroying someone who hurt you. It's forcing them to watch you succeed while they learn to become human. It's making them earn what they once thought they deserved. It's transforming their weapon into a mirror where they see exactly who they are. David whistled. That's cold. No, I corrected. That's justice. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows between the buildings. Somewhere in Brooklyn, Bradley Morrison was probably preparing for another day of proving himself worthy of basic respect. Somewhere in Connecticut, Richard Sterling was watching his empire dissolve, perhaps proud that someone had finally held his son accountable. And here, in my corner office that overlooked the battlefield where I'd lost everything and won it back tenfold, I sat down to work. Not for revenge anymore, not for validation, but because I'd learned the most important lesson of all true power isn't making someone kneel once. It's creating a world where they have to earn the right to stand. Bradley Sterling had fired me, thinking he was ending my story. Instead, he'd written himself into it as a cautionary footnote. A reminder that in America, you can be born on third base. But if you're not careful, someone who started in the dugout might just steal home while you're admiring your own reflection. The empire had fallen. The phoenix had risen. And the son who'd once made me beg for my dignity now understood what it meant to beg for a chance to earn his own. My revenge was complete. Not because I'd destroyed him, but because I'd given him something worse and better than destruction, the opportunity to become who he should have been all along. The hardest lesson, learned the hardest way. The story ended exactly where it began, with someone learning their place. The only difference was, this time, he'd have to earn it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate revenge and redemption, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Emily's position? Let me know in the comments.